can you believe it's already like 2.5 hours for this event? Can you feel that long? I don't. It's just like so many things that we can listen to, and I feel very, very happy to be here. And actually, the last but not the least speaker for today is Mr. Rich Redelfs. Really love his last name, his first name, really. And he was named the Wallace Lamb CEO of the Year. As the president of a CEO, Mr. Redelfs actually led a very, very successful private company called Atheros. And Atheros now is Qualcomm Atheros. And actually, with the rich experience, he helped a lot of startup companies become a very successful venture capitalist. Let's welcome Rich Redelfs. Thank you.
Thank you.
And followed by his speech, we're gonna have a very exciting panel discussion.
Well, when Larry asked us to talk a little bit about life and career development, I thought I would start with a little perspective of how I view it. And it starts when I was very young. I like to play games. I don't know about you guys, but you know, checkers and chutes and ladders and, you know, all kinds of things. Capture the flag were popular games, and even in high school I was president of the chess club. Yes, I was a geek. But I like playing games, and I view life as a game. I mean, it's a serious game in some ways, but you know, it's also a game you only play once. But you play it to win, and you have to define what winning is for you. So, you know, the goals of the game of life are determined by each of us. We can play this game quite differently than others. That's what kind of makes it a fun game. It's not a very fixed game. It's quite flexible. And our first two speakers talked quite a bit about, you know, the goals you set, and be careful of what goals you set and how you set them. But I think that's really critical. And then the other key piece of this, and I can only keep track of 2 important points, not 3. I'm not as smart as some of our speakers who had 3 points. It's the goals, and then it's the rules of the game and the strategies of the game as well. And how do you determine what those are? And again, it's a flexible game. The rules are not something you read on a piece of paper, but you get to make them up yourself. And they can be reflected in your goals. They can be reflected in society. I mean, ethics is one of the game rules that you can be flexible on, and there are consequences sometimes, sometimes public consequences, but sometimes they're just things you have to live with. You know, can you live with yourself if you're cheating at the rules that are sort of the published rules of the game? So anyhow, that's sort of how I view it. I've always been a game player. And I think it makes it a little lighter when, you know, it's a serious game, but at the same time, if you view it as a game, if you're always trying to sort of figure out how do you win this game, and what are the rules now, and how are things changing, it takes a little bit of that seriousness away from it. So anyhow, that's a little bit of my perspective on it. So to that note, you know, so starting with the goals. When I was very young, I was sort of into business. I was a bit of a wheeler dealer, and you know, I was mowing lawns for the neighbors. I was coin collecting was popular when I was a kid, and I was, you know, buying and selling coins in the school. I remember I was 12 years old, and my dad was asking my mom for change, and I pulled out my wallet, and I had a $100 bill in my wallet, and my dad saw that, and he's like, "What? Where did you get that?" You know, I thought he'd stolen it or something like that. So I was always sort of a business wheeler and dealer, even at a young age. In fact, I had another friend in high school. His name was Scott Hill, and Scott put his arm around me one day. He said, "You know, you and I, Rich, we're either going to be millionaires or we're going to end up in jail." So the FBI showed up at Scott Hill's door one day. He and the local sheriff were running a numbers racket, and Scott ended up in jail. So I ended up out in Silicon Valley. So it's sort of interesting, his vision of the future. Anyhow, so I was a business geek, and so one of the rules of the game that I've come up with is to seek advice. You know, surround yourself with mentors and advisors. And I first thought about going to business school for undergraduate because I wanted to be in business. I wanted to be a CEO someday. But I sought out advisors, and a lot of people said, look, the world is getting more and more technical, even back when I was making these decisions. And it was better to get an undergraduate in a technical field and then get an MBA after that. And so I chose that path. I became an engineer in undergrad. I went to Purdue and then chose to get an MBA after that. Another related lesson is when I was at Purdue, I was trying to figure out where I'm going to get my MBA. And Purdue wanted me to stay and get my MBA there. They offered me more than full tuition. They were actually going to pay me to stay there and do my MBA. Free room and board. I would be a TA for 2 classes part-time, and they were going to pay me on top of that salary for doing that. I also got into Harvard Business School, which basically they said, hey, you want to come here? You paying everything. So no free lunch at Harvard. And so it was a tough decision. Do I stay at Purdue? They were putting a lot of pressure on me, and everyone I talked to at Purdue said, well, stay at Purdue. Of course, it's a great school, and we're going to pay you. But I had a mentor there who was actually in the business school at Purdue, and he said, go to Harvard. Even if you run up big debts, which I did, he said, the network you will obtain there will be more than worth the debt that you bring up. And he said, look, I'm here, and it's a great school, but go to Harvard if you can. And that was advice that I ended up taking, so I went that route. So it's not just a matter of having mentors and advisors, but you have to listen to a lot of them, and then you ultimately have to make the decision. So one of the rules of my game is I'm the CEO of my life. Everyone else is an advisor, but I make the decisions, and you don't blame others for bad decisions you make. You can't sit there and go, well, so-and-so told me this, so-and-so told me that, which is kind of rule number 3, which is I'm never a victim. One of the things that drives me crazy is when people blame their problems on other things. It was my boss, it was the environment, it was the economy, it was something else. Don't ever be a victim. You make the decisions, you live with the decisions. If you make a bad decision, recognize it and admit to it, and then change it. There's very, very few decisions in life, unless they end you up in jail. Most decisions in life, you can rewind and make another decision today and make up for the bad decision you made yesterday. So don't feel locked into the decisions you make. Other life lessons. When I was at Harvard Business School, I'll tell 2 quick stories there. One was the last day of class. Most of the professors would give you a summary of their class and sort of say, well, this is what we learned, and this is really the important stuff that you need to know. But I had one professor, and it's funny, of all the other speeches, I don't remember the details of any of them. This is the only one I really remember. And the professor actually said, I'm not going to give you a summary of this class. If you haven't gotten it by now, you're not going to get it in my summary speech. What I'm going to tell you is 2 things. One is, you guys are going to do well enough in life. And yes, there will be people who do better. In fact, most of the world will do better. But you'll do well enough in life that you don't really have to worry. So put enough money aside. Don't spend it too fast. Put enough money aside so that if you ever need to walk, if you're put in a compromised position, you can just walk away. You can quit, walk away, because you're not so tied to the house payment or the mortgage or whatever that you can't walk away. So that was a very, very important lesson I felt, and one that I lived with, because if you are ever put in a compromised ethical position, or asked to do something you don't believe in, or you even feel that the company is being unethical, even if they're not asking you to do it, you can walk away from that and not feel that stress. So I felt that was important advice. I'm trying to remember the other. I'll tell you another one from business school as well. So I was talking about mentors again. You have to listen carefully to mentors. One of my Harvard Business School professors was teaching small business, and I was interested. I was very entrepreneurial, and went to that professor and wanted to talk about, what should I do? Because I didn't really know what job to take right out of business school. And he said, well, join a startup. And this was a guy I really respected, but I got to tell you, I was really disappointed, because there was no question, there was no trying to understand me and where I was in my life and what was the right timing or anything like that. It was just, he was a small business professor, so you should go join a small business, right, without thinking about it. And I found that very frustrating, that he didn't try to understand me. I ended up doing that, but frankly, I joined a startup that wasn't well managed and failed, and then I did another one that wasn't well managed and failed. And what I learned is to be patient, and it's sometimes, particularly here in Silicon Valley, we hear so many of these success stories of the young kid right out of school goes and starts the company and becomes a multi-billionaire. What you don't know behind the scenes, and most of those, they had the brilliant idea, but they brought in some adult supervision who actually helped them build the company. So many of these successes, even the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs had senior people they brought in early on to help them build the companies. So yes, if you've got the idea, go ahead. But if you don't, take your time, be patient. I think you can be too patient as well, if things aren't working. And that was the other piece of advice that one of my professors at Harvard said about work. They said, at the end of each day, you should feel like you've gotten what you've given, that you've been adequately compensated by the company with either learning or cash compensation or stock options or whatever. But you should be feeling like it's a fair deal. You're giving the company something and you're getting from them. It's when you come in every day and you feel like, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not learning anything, I'm underpaid, and then it's time to look elsewhere. If you feel like you're getting more than you're giving, then you probably should question whether the management's smart or whether you're taking advantage of them as well. But I thought that was very good advice as well. And that really helped me understand the limits of patience. I think, on the patience note too, by the way, I just read a survey recently and they said the biggest correlating factor to successful startups is actually age. Those over 40 are much more successful than those in their early 20s. The failure rate's much lower. And the press doesn't pick up on that. I mean, we like to celebrate the young billionaires, right, because it's a good news story. But statistically, it's just not true. So be patient, but don't be overly patient. Make sure you're growing and hitting your objectives. Again, you have goals. You're playing this game. Your pieces need to be moving forward on the game board every day. You need to feel like you're making successes there. I went to a startup after business school and was there 4 years, and I got promoted about every year, maybe less than a year, and that was working great, except I realized that I was on an up elevator on a sinking ship. And once you hit the top deck, the ship's still going down. So I was there 4 years. I learned a lot. I got a lot of experience, but it was time to move on. And so again, you have to evaluate whether you're learning enough versus where the ship's going. And then I went to 3Com Corporation in the early days of networking, and frankly, after doing 2 startups and having them very poorly managed, I said, I want to go to a company that has well-respected management, and 3Com's management came out of Hewlett-Packard. They were very well-respected. This was before the internet thing took off. For those of you who don't know, 3Com's founder invented Ethernet. And when I joined, it was already a public company with a $400 million market cap. And I said, this is well management. I'm going to go here, really learn for 2 or 3 years, and then I'm going to go try a startup again. Well, I ended up staying 10 years because the market cap went from 400 million to 13 billion while I was there, and I got to run a division that was over $1 billion in revenue over time, and started what became the Wi-Fi Alliance. My team actually named Wi-Fi. When I was at 3Com, we started that up. As most of you know, the IEEE 802.11 is the legal name of what became Wi-Fi. So that was a lot of fun. And then, one of the things there that I had a great mentor. In fact, the best mentor I ever had, and another, kind of lesson of the game is not just advisors, but a real mentor and a boss. If you can find a job where you have the right boss who really takes you under wing. This guy, he told me who he was going to fire before he fired people and asked me what I thought about it. And, really took me under wing, and I learned a tremendous amount and got a lot of confidence in that. Unfortunately, 3Com was struggling, making some bad strategic decisions. And I was called by a recruiter who said, you know, Rich, you're doing the wireless division here. There's a few folks over at Stanford who've invented a new approach to wireless. And it was John Hennessy, who later became president of Stanford, and Teresa Meng, who some of you may know is a professor there in wireless. And so I met with them, and they were doing a totally proprietary wireless system. They had two boxes they were going to build for connecting your cable modem to your PC in your home. And I said to them, I said, you know, there's this new IEEE standard, and it's going to be called Wi-Fi. None of it had been announced yet. And could your technology do that? And they said, well, probably, but we have this proprietary thing, and it's better. And we did some analysis and came to the conclusion it was probably 20% faster, but cost 50% more. And that wasn't good enough to be, you know, proprietary and make it in the market. So I convinced them that they should focus on being a chip company and focus on doing this new Wi-Fi thing. And they said, but only if you come and join us as CEO. So, you know, I felt that was time. I mean, I was how old was I in that time? 41. And I felt like I had learned a lot. I'd been a general manager in a big company, and it was time. You know, it was looking at the rules of the game, looking at was I prepared to jump into that next level of complexity of the game and do it on my own, and I felt I was time. So I made that jump. My boss was very upset with me, and the human resources director said it was kind of like a divorce, like your name would come up and he would just be furious because, you know, he had been a great mentor to me, and I got to tell you, I felt terrible about leaving, but it turns out he was forced out a few months later, and he forgave me after that because he saw the handwriting on the wall himself, and we're friends again. But you know, these were hard decisions, and I did discuss it with him before I went public with it. But you know, we had a great relationship. We built Atheros into the leading Wi-Fi chip company in the world, took it public, and then it was bought later by Qualcomm. So it was fun. And then I joined Foundation Capital, which was the leading VC firm in Atheros. So Bill Elmore, who founded Foundation, asked me to come be a partner. He had been on my board. And you know, that was like, you know, this is great. I get to go help other companies do what I just did. A lot of fun. And then I had some family health crisis. And talk about, you know, the tough decisions that we have to make sometimes. So here I am, a VC with Foundation Capital, $3+ billion under management, one of the top firms. And my wife had breast cancer. And about 6 weeks later, my daughter ended up with neurological problems, started having panic attacks and seizures, and I had both of them in the hospital at the same time. And couldn't figure out what was wrong with my daughter. My wife said the breast cancer was easy. They kind of knew what to do with that, but they had no idea what to do with our daughter. And anyhow, make a long story short, you know, I stuck it out for a few years at Foundation, but decided to take time off and be with the family. My daughter was later diagnosed with Lyme disease, and she's doing better now. She is in college, but you may know there's no known cure for it, so she still struggles with it, but at least we knew how to treat it. But you know, very hard decision after being on the fast track for so many years, and just feeling like the rug was pulled out from under me, but you know, needing to support the family. So these are tough decisions, but sometimes the rules of the game change, and you have to recognize them. I mean, I could have just stayed on that path, and I saw that happen. In fact, we know a number of people who have had Lyme in the family and they end up with divorces because the husbands are so focused on the career, and it just tears the family apart. So, you know, part of playing a game is recognizing the rules of the game. When do the rules change, and what do you need to do now? And it's tough decisions at times. You make sacrifices, but anyhow, that's a little bit of my life story, and happy to answer questions when we get the group together. Thanks so much.